out of the ordinary insights. Brought to you by Investec Specialist Bank.
Hello and a warm welcome to this week's edition of Captains of Industry. My guest in the hot seat this evening, Michael Jordaan, the CEO of FNB. Michael, thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
I see that the Daily Maverick has dubbed you the cool banker. How do you like that terminology when it comes to your personality?
You know what, if I have to describe myself, I see myself as a nerd rather. You know, it's everything but cool. I love things like books and reading and intellectualizing about things. So it's really flattering that somebody says that, but I think it's far from the truth.
I think go with cool rather than nerdy. Let's focus on your career. You've been in the banking environment for most of your career. You did start at Deutsche Bank. How have you managed to hold yourself steady in one organization, pretty much FNB? Is that because of your fast-track elevation through the ranks?
No, you know, the exact opposite. I think I'm quite a boring banker. I'm one of those guys who always knew he wanted to be a banker. When I was a kid, I read up about it, read a lot, every single article. And for me, in a sense, my career just always been charted out to study economics and accounting, etc., and law. And the end goal was just to be a banker. And I'm very, very happy where I am. And in fact, they don't have to pay me to do my job most of the time.
I don't think that you should say that too loudly. Did you always think that you would be CEO of a bank?
Not really. I must say, I think what attracted me to this was the intellectual nature of banking. I mean, you can really think about the various concepts. It's central to the economy. And it's one of those industries that everything that happens in the world has some bearing on what's going to happen in your business. So I love the intellectual stimulation that comes with being a banker.
Now, the face of FNB is very much one that is prevalent on the social media platforms, the Facebooks and the Twitter, etc., etc. You're taking the lead in that space. And you personally have built a relatively big Twitter following. Do you enjoy it?
I've become a little bit addicted to Twitter. I must admit, I'm not on Facebook or LinkedIn or any other platforms, but I like the brevity of Twitter. I like the fact that it's tongue-in-cheek and you can be quite humorous. And I have to tell you, there was no grand strategy behind it. Sometimes people impute a strategy as if you're doing it deliberately. I'm just having fun. And I'm trying to snatch the few free moments that there are in the day just to catch up on what's happening in the world and to tweet.
Have you had any criticism for being so prevalent on Twitter? Because it really breaks the mold of your traditional CEO.
Well, I think I get into trouble most often with our internal public relations department, you know, when I break a story that, you know, they had carefully laid plans to do. But I think the advantages of just being in touch with customers out there are really, really important. And if I have to reflect on a negative story, we recently had an outage where our banking systems were unavailable for a couple of hours. That's, of course, a terrible thing to happen to us and to our customers. But at least I could use social media to update customers every half an hour on what was happening. And for me, that was a very important a medium of using it not just for fun, but for communicating very serious messages to the market, which would not have been possible 5 or 10 years ago.
Although you have got your personal presence on Twitter, there's also R.B. Jacobs, the face, so to say, yes, of FNB. Who came up with that concept?
R.B. Jacobs is a mystery guy. No one quite knows who R.B. is. I don't know. People don't believe me when I say that. R.B. may even be here today or watching the program. And it was the name that used to appear on FNB's checkbooks when they advertised them in the old days. You know, you had to present a checkbook and there had to be a name on it. It was R.B. Jacobs. So when we had to come up with a Twitter persona, we didn't want it to be too corporate. It is social media after all. And then somebody just said, well, let's use R.B. Jacobs.
Let's talk about the Innovation Awards, because perhaps this links into your whole Twitter profile and R.B. Jacobs. Did somebody internally come up with the idea? Were they paid R1 million for that ingenuity?
The way the awards actually came up is we decided on our new strategy. This was shortly after I'd become CEO. And then the team felt that everything was good but quite conventional, and we had to do something that differentiated FNB from the other banks, and it was innovation. And when we announced this to staff, it was with a small prize. And we were then challenged. We said, if you really take this thing seriously, it should be R1 million. And I have to tell you, I was very nervous. As a young CEO, I didn't feel I could make that call. There were members of the board during the presentation. I asked them, can we do this? And they said, well, it's not our call, it's your call. So we started with R1 million, and it made it very, very symbolic that we're taking innovation seriously, that we reward innovators, and that we celebrate them.
Do you think this is why you've also become something of an internet service provider within the bank? Some say that you are now really blurring the lines between a telecommunications company and a bank. Is that intentional?
You know, one of the benefits of innovation is that employees are encouraged to sometimes take risks and to do things that make sense for customers. So yes, we do have a telco license, and the way we leverage that is to make data available to our customers for free. Customers can get up to 5 gigs of data for free, and effectively that means they can use their cell phones to phone each other for free. Now that's a very disruptive model in the telco space, but the reason why we're doing it is not just to disrupt telcos, it's to bring value to our customers. So all of these things, we're very careful to stay within our core business of banking. You only qualify for this if you are a FNB customer, but then we don't mind having a bit of fun and disrupting other industries.
Absolutely, because it is something of a fine line that you have to walk, in that you don't compete too heavily with those telcos, because you could get significant pushback.
I wouldn't say that is what really stops us. It's just that strategy has to be tight. Because otherwise you lose focus, and you lose focus on the fact that we need to be really, really good at banking to be able to compete. So that will always just be the number one priority for focusing our thinking, our resources, our best people. But there are other examples. I mean, we in the fuel industry, for example, we get up to 15% back if you use a FNB card. That's a little bit disruptive in the fuel industry.
Has there been huge take-up on that product?
Yes, we've done more than 100 million rands that we've paid back to customers within a year after launch.
With this culture of innovation continually being driven through the bank, where do you think FNB is going to be 5 years out, even if you aren't at the helm at that point?
I'll make a prediction, which I think is quite a brave one, and maybe you can invite...
You're known for your brave predictions, Michael, so we'll give you license on this one.
Well, this one you'll have to invite me back in 5 years and tell me if it's true, but I believe that banking worldwide will change more in the next 5 years than it has in the past 100 years. And the reason for that is technology. We are getting challenged by technology providers from all over the world. So let me give you an example. When you use Apple, for example, and you can go to iTunes and you've got an iTunes account. What stops Apple from making that iTunes account a bank account? They've already got a brand that lots of people love. They're all over the world. People are already using that account to buy lots of apps, for example, or music. So it's just one step further for Apple to become a bank. And that is hugely threatening for traditional banks. So I believe we just have to keep on innovating. We have to be paranoid about what technology advantages can be given to other companies, and we have to defend ourselves.
Listening to you speak like this, it's very difficult to think of you as not being at the helm of FNB, but you have publicly stated that your time is coming to an end. Why so soon? You
know, it's been 9 years. I've been in the hot seat for about 9 years. And I do believe that you can pass good things onto a company, but certainly also your bad habits and your bad traits. I think it's good to have renewal in a company. And I'm very fortunate that I realized the secret of success very early on, which is you have to surround yourself with people that are better than you. And as long as you do that, then it is quite easy to actually hand over the baton.
Have you already put firm succession plans in place?
The board actually requires that all areas in FirstRand have succession if that red bus does knock you over, yes.
You mentioned the type of people that you surround yourself with, and you refer to the fact that they need to be good, but there must be other character traits that you look for.
Obviously you need competence. You need competence in any type of job that you do. I think in our environment, which we like to characterize as an owner-manager environment, as an entrepreneurial one, we also like a certain type of mindset, people that run the business as if it's their own business.
Are they rewarded to that effect?
They are. Clearly, it's not the same as the real founders of the bank, but I think that's the big challenge in banking, as in other businesses, is how do you align managerial incentives with long-term sustainable returns for shareholders? How do you also then at the same time prevent excessive risk-taking? But in our environment, as I'm suggesting, taking too few risks could also be very risky if you're not innovative in terms of technology. So we like people who thrive in that type of culture, less hierarchical, less autocratic, but people with a can-do attitude.
Do you believe that you've got a formula that is working when it comes to this owner-manager culture?
I do, and this I have to quote Adrian Gore, because he came up with such a wonderful quote. He says, to be an entrepreneur is like jumping out of a plane without a parachute, and you only have a rucksack full of silkworms, and you just hope they're overachievers. So I do believe we have that type of culture where the innovation that's now bubbling up from everywhere in the business is very, very strong. And it really is that culture. That's actually the only thing a CEO can create in a company is a culture. And after that, you have to trust people to get on with it. And I'm just very privileged that we have 30,000 people that are highly engaged in the business.
I want to drill down into your Africa strategy. Obviously, at the moment, very successful in Namibia and Botswana, where it looks as though you've taken a startup attitude and grown the business from the ground up. However, something like Mozambique, or a country like Mozambique, there you've gone in with a small acquisition and then boosted it. Correct me if I'm wrong on any of these strategies. To this point?
We are privileged, though, that the startups or the banks that started in Namibia and Botswana were many, many years ago. So there are people with foresight who actually did that. And in a sense, we're just doing the same in the new countries where we're going into. It's not going to move the needle immediately. And I think that's where we actually have to tell the market that going into Africa is not suddenly going to transform FNB or FirstRand, but they are very important steps for the long-term growth of the company.
Let's look at your strategy for Nigeria and for Ghana. Two huge economies, you need a presence there, but obviously the environment in those territories is one where they're cutting back on the number of banks. What is your strategy going to be there? Are you going to go in with a big bang approach, look for a big acquisition so that you ranked number 3, 4 or 5 straight off the bat?
Okay, I'm not going to give you a straight answer. I'll tell you what our strategy is. We like incremental expansion, greenfields expansion, because that plays in line with our entrepreneurial attitude. It also means we can take our system, which we think is a very good core banking system, and immediately apply it in another country and get the innovations that are there and put your own management in there. There aren't the skeletons that you would get, that you sometimes do get when you buy a company and you don't have to pay goodwill. However, in some countries, and admittedly Nigeria is one of them, they're not handing out new licenses. If anything, Governor Sanusi would like to see less and less banks.
More consolidation
Quite
in
right.
that environment.
So in those countries, clearly then we would need to look at forms of acquisition, but there's also a limited checkbook. We don't want to put all our capital at risk in one country. So it's a constant battle between either a startup or buying a stake in an existing bank.
And you must be thinking twice about acquisitions after the Lusaka debacle, when the deal was almost done, and then the regulation and the authority came down that it wasn't actually a done deal and you had to reverse on that transaction.
Yes, I must say the Zambia experience for us was a disappointing one. We really believe we'd shaken hands, and we believe that our due diligence revealed that an external party was really needed to come into that bank. But we were quite fortunate that we already had a greenfields operation in that country. And what we're now doing is saying, instead of spending the money on goodwill or paying in another bank, we can invest it in organically expanding our business.